Have you ever felt like you had to hide part of yourself to be taken seriously? Maybe you showed up as someone you're not so that way you could fit in or keep the peace or be respected. Well, I've been there too. And today I'm talking about a mask that I've worn before, and I didn't realize how much it was affecting me. By the end of the episode, you're going to learn how to uncover your own mask so that way you can slowly peel it away so you can feel more like yourself in every situation. 1, 2, Welcome to Authenticity Lab, Season 2, where we explore how to reconnect with our authentic selves so we can thrive in uncertainty. I'm Dr. Kelsey Miles. I'm a musician, songwriter, and also a chemistry professor. I use science and music to help me understand my world within and the world around me. Each week, I share a new life story and I break it down using the scientific method. In this podcast, I use my calibrate, experiment, optimize framework. And we are currently in the calibration phase. Now, last month we looked at self-forgiveness, self-acceptance, embracing the parts that make you who you are. And in this month, we're focusing on my song Shadow, and we are uncovering all of those hidden parts. It's these hidden parts, these subconscious programs we have that we don't even realize how much they affect us. So by diving in, shining a light on them, my hope is that this month you'll start to uncover some things that might be holding you back. And how can we learn about them, calibrate so that we can run life experiments and get out of whatever stuckness we might be feeling. We all have parts of ourselves that we hide in some way, shape, or form in different scenarios, whether it's work or in our relationships. And today we're looking at how we use masks to hide part of ourselves. Without knowing it, these masks can actually keep us from feeling connected to ourselves. And over time, you start to lose access to what makes you really shine fully as yourself. Let's dive into the story. When I started graduate school at The Ohio State University, I was there for the doctoral program in chemistry. And I vividly remember not letting my hair, which is wild and crazy and very curly, be out and about. I would always pull it back in some kind of a bun or ponytail, something that kind of felt more tamed and less wild. Now, my hair is really an extension of my personality. It's a little wild and a little crazy. And I always joke about how I'm wound very tight, just like my hair. And when I was in graduate school, I recognized ways in which I felt like I needed to hide some of my feminine traits, which one of them is wearing my hair down. And I also changed how I dressed. So in graduate school, when I started, I was pulling my hair back in a bun. And I also remember wearing slacks and just like neutral tones, like very plain, very nerdy, I guess, if you'd like to call it that. I don't know. I just know that I was trying not to stand out. And with hair like this, and if I'm wearing anything bright, it makes me stand out. And my personality was already big enough. So not only did I tame what I was wearing, I also tamed my personality. The reason I did this was because a lot of the sciences are led by many male scientists. There were, maybe just a couple female professors there at The Ohio State University. Most of my professors were men. Not saying any of this is bad. I just recognized that feminine traits weren't as prevalent in graduate school. So I started to tone mine back. And it actually worked, masking part of myself. It worked. I was taken seriously. When I would bring up a question in a seminar, I was listened to. None of my looks got in the way of someone making a judgment about whether or not I was smart enough. And as women, we already have higher voices. And so toning down my physical traits was one way that I could fit in a little more to the masculine energy that I was around. Maybe for you, it's a little different, this idea of this mask. Maybe you just don't speak up as much as you need to at work or in relationships, or maybe you tone down how positive you are, or maybe you tone down your ambition and your big goals to some of your friends because it makes them a little uncomfortable. Whatever it is, if you have part of yourself that you're taming in order to feel more comfortable in the space that you're around, in the short term, it feels good and it usually works. This is kind of a survival skill that we all participate in some way, shape, or form. The problem with this is that if you keep going with this, you'll start to lose access to your authentic voice. This doesn't happen overnight. It's just this slow creeping away from who you really are. And so when you leave work or when you leave hanging out with your friends, it starts to come back. But if you're not as connected to that internal voice, your ambition, your power, your creativity, your positivity, whatever it is that's unique about you that makes you shine, the less you stay connected with it, the less you are going to feel its energy and be able to exude that, which I guess is the whole point of a mask. You don't want to exude it. So it really makes me ask, why do we do this? And also, is it really that beneficial? In my grad school story, it seemed beneficial short term, but in time I started to notice that even though I was appearing more masculine, there were still times in which I wasn't taken seriously for whatever reason. And so it made me start to question why I was doing it, because if there were times I wasn't taken seriously anyway, then maybe wearing the mask isn't fixing everything. And these micro masks, they really add up. It starts to train you subconsciously that there's part of you that isn't okay to be expressed. And so, in a sense, you are kind of cutting part of yourself off. And in time, you'll start to notice it, but it's not easy to see right away. And this leads me to some lyrics of my song Shadow. I can see the shame in your eyes, and it gets harder every time to fake perfection when you hide the person you despise inside.
I can see the shame in your eyes, and it gets harder every time to fake perfection when you hide the person you despise inside.
You see, I didn't really like how animated and how enthusiastic and out there I am and I like to be when I'm discussing something that I'm interested in. That wasn't always celebrated in the world of chemistry, where it's very scientific and very data driven. And I felt like some of my ideas wouldn't be received in that way. And this kind of happened over time. It's not something that we learn right away. And it's just small interactions, and they start to chip away at yourself and what's acceptable. And the more that you wear that mask, the more that you are kind of shaming that part of yourself. And it starts to get harder and harder. Because the truth is, the more that you separate from what makes you who you are, the more that you won't feel good. It'll feel okay externally in the short term, but over time, you stop feeling that great. It's that weird in-between uncertain zone that's what hopefully will make you question, why do I feel this way? It's less about changing the scene that you're in and the external. It's more about shifting the perception you have within. This is what happened to me in grad school. I started to question my choices to tone down my appearance and my personality. And I realized that there were still times I wasn't taken seriously or heard fully in a seminar, or the feedback I would receive felt off, as if they didn't actually hear my words. Or the most frustrating thing would be if someone else said the same thing that I felt like I communicated, and now all of a sudden it's a great idea. It started to make me question, was it really worth it for me to hide parts of myself? So I experimented. I started to wear my hair down more. And when I changed graduate schools, that was really where I did that when I was at UW-Madison. And being more like myself, I realized I still wasn't always heard and understood and respected. But at the end of the day, I felt a little better because I knew that I was showing up the best way that I could. It's in those quiet moments after you're in those situations that you can feel when you're still connected with yourself. And it's in the quiet moments that if you stray too far away from yourself during your day, it's going to take a lot of energy to feel okay. So at the end of the day, if my idea wasn't heard or I felt unseen because I wore my hair down for whatever the reason, I wasn't taken seriously. At least when I went home, I felt a little better. So when I got this job as a chemistry professor, I went ahead and leaned fully into my feminine self. Pretty much most days I wear a skirt, my hair is always down, and I realized through this, not masking anymore, that what part of me masking and wearing that bun and wearing the clothes that were really neutral toned and more masculine, really what I was sharing was that I didn't feel like I was good enough to be heard and respected for my ideas. And so it really shifted inside for me. I accepted that I'm a complete nerd and that I know what I'm talking about. I don't always get it right, but I'm pretty dang good at teaching chemistry. And if I show up more in my more natural feminine state with my skirt and my heels and my hair down, I'll feel really good. It actually let me be an even better instructor. By removing the mask and letting myself shine, I'm not asking for permission from anyone else. I'm giving myself permission saying, I take myself seriously in my role, and I know that I'm saying something that is worthwhile to be heard. And when I come from a place of that centered stance, then if someone doesn't want to take me seriously, that's on them. And what I noticed was that it didn't matter if I was wearing a mask, not shining as brightly as myself, my hair was pulled back, or if I was being fully feminine and saying the same things, there was always going to be someone who didn't take me seriously. And so if both are going to happen, whether or not I mask or not, then why not just be fully myself? Because at the end of the day, in those quiet moments, I can kind of smile and say, I did my best today. It doesn't feel empty. It really rings true for me. I showed up fully. All right, now it's your turn for our calibration moment. I'd like for you to take a little time today and consider the following journal prompt. You can write this down or just reflect on it. When do I feel like I'm wearing a mask? Is it around my family, at work, around friends? You might notice you may wear more than one mask. I know I still do this sometimes. When I'm around certain people, I might tone down my ambition. I might speak a little more slowly, although when I'm around some friends, I speak much faster. If you aren't sure about what mask you're wearing, notice ways in which you interact with different groups of people. Maybe you'll find that you interact differently with your close friends than you do your family or at work. Noticing these differences will help you calibrate to see where it is where you're pulling back parts of you that are very authentic. And now I want you to get fully honest with yourself. What would happen if you showed up as your full self in all of those areas that you wrote down about with your family, work, your friends? What would happen? Do you fear any of it? Do you fear any consequences? This is just a practice of reflection to kind of see where this is sitting for you. And although we are in the calibrate phase, I'm going to invite you to do a small experiment. What's one way you can lower your mask a little bit? Is there someone at work that you can be a little bit more like yourself around? Maybe let that shine a little bit in the next conversation. Say something a little more like yourself rather than that corporate talk. Whatever it is, maybe you can find something where you can shine a little more of yourself onto it. This makes me want to invite you to add a comment to this podcast below, because I think many of you have stories about this. I know some of my friends have shared things that they were scared to do at work, but they showed a little bit of themselves at work. One of my friends actually hosted or was the MC for a big event, and then no one had ever done it, but she introduced music, like walk-up music for every person at this event, and made it really fun. And she was so nervous because no one had done that before. It was always a lot more dry and professional, and they loved it. And so what's something that you've done where you let your mask drop a little bit so you could shine a little more? I'm curious because I bet many of you have some success stories about this, and it feels good. Doesn't it feel good? I want to remind you that this calibration phase is not something where we're overhauling anything. We're trying to get radically honest about where we're at and calibrating what we're observing in our own lives. So that way we can slowly introduce things that make us more like us. The whole point of this phase is to catch yourself before you get too off course. I've noticed it myself where I completely lost my voice because I had spent so long getting further and further and further away from what made me who I really am. And it took me a lot of calibration to get back. If you're really far from where you are and you're experimenting in life, nothing will really feel like it's adding up, and you'll start to feel confusion. It's these micro calibration moments that help you stay kind of on track. That's why I'm doing this podcast every week. They're little check-ins to just make sure that you're connected to who you really are. Showing up as your full self is not always easy. And sometimes it doesn't feel acceptable. And I get that. The point here is not that, for example, for me, it's not like I'm going to show up in my sequenced, show outfits in front of my class. There are ways that I can still be fully myself while respecting the place that I'm around. What I've noticed, though, is that these masks that we wear trying to fit in, without recognizing it, we start to lean more and more into the mask. And then without realizing it, we'll start to feel some shame because the further you get away from your true self, showing up as you, the more icky you're going to feel. You just won't feel as great. And it's not an overnight process. Nothing we're talking about this month about our shadow, our hidden parts, is something we're going to fix overnight. We're just here to try to recognize them and shine a light on them. This leads me to my favorite lyric in this song, which says, "Darkness leads you to the light."
Darkness leads you to the light.
Even if you don't change at all, how you show up at work, around your friends, around your family, in all of those situations after listening to this podcast episode, recognizing that you show up differently than your truest version of yourself is enough to get the ball rolling, to invite you to start to share more of who you really are. Calibrating yourself, finding out really where you sit in all of these situations is really the first step. And recognizing those parts that we hide, the parts in the dark, that's what allows you to step into your full self, to step into the light. It's really understanding and going through the dark moments, the hidden parts. That's the pathway. It's not over and around, it's through. darkness leads you to the light, as scary as it feels to really think about the parts that you have to hide. This is where it starts. And I have to end with this beautiful little story. So, at my current job, I have received so many compliments from the women that have been in my class. I have received so many compliments about my skirt or my outfit or my hair. And my favorite part about this is that I get to be super nerdy in front of all of my students and share how much I love science. And at the same time, they get to see a woman in their feminine state be a complete nerd. So, in a way, by showing up fully as myself, sure, there's moments I might not be taken seriously, but I know that I'm inspiring some of these young women that they don't have to hide who they are. And you have the power to do this too at your work, around your family, and around your friends. Maybe sharing that ambition or speaking up in a work meeting. You might inspire somebody else and start to change the culture that you're around. Don't underestimate what it's like if you shine your light in places where you've been hiding it. You never know what's going to happen. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with someone that you know who might also get some benefit out of it. Right now, my podcast is just word of mouth. This is who's listening to it. And my hope is that we can spread this to more people. We had a great group call last week, and if you're interested in our next group call, it will be on August 1st. I believe that's a Friday. Email me at kelsey@kelseymiles.com if you'd like to be part of those free calibration calls. Thank you so much for joining me on Authenticity Lab. I'll be back next week with a new life story to inspire you to live more boldly, lead a life of curiosity so you can keep being your most amazing, authentic self.
Yeah, that house will always call you home.